Hello, good afternoon for some of you, and good morning, or even for others. I don't know what time you are watching me. My name is Mariana Santino. I'm a Brazilian dermatologist from Rio. I have taken my dermatology residence at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. Today, we will be talking about a case of inverse klippel-trenaunay syndrome. This work was a result of an internship that I have taken in Lisbon, Portugal. I was there for a month during my dermatology residence, and I had the pleasure to work with Maria João Paiva Lopes, who helped me to develop this study case. She's the chief department of dermatology service at Capuchos Hospital in Lisbon. So this clinical case is about a 16-year-old girl that presents a 10.5 by 8 centimeters grayish depressed plaque interspersed by hypochromic areas on the lower half of her left lateral thigh. We can see telangiectasia overlapping the lesion peripherally. On this picture, it's possible to see a visible vein close to the lesion. The plaque was present since birth, but initially violet looking, like a port wine stem. It's evolved over the years, having widened and atrophied, and there's no discrepancy in the length of the lower limbs. On the angioresonance, we have a vascular malformation on the skin and subcutaneous tissue supplied by non-dilated intermuscular branch tributary from the popliteal artery. Dilated draining veins have not been documented except for a superficial draining vein that courses along the subcutaneous cellular tissue of the anterior thigh. On this other image of the angioresonance, we have a thinning of the subcutaneous tissue thickness in the vascular alteration topography, but without intramuscular or bone extension. With all this information, we can say that this case may represent a case of inverse klippel-trenaunay syndrome. First of all, speaking about the klippel-trenaunay syndrome, also known as KTS, it's a rare idiopathic vascular disorder of unknown etiology, but probably due to a somatic mutation in the PIK3CA gene early in the embryogenesis that usually occurs at birth or in the early infancy when the child begins to stand and walk. And at least one of the classical findings is present at birth. The classical signs that a person with KTS may present are port wine stem, which is a congenital capillary malformation, varicose vein, lymphatic malformation with soft tissue, fat and muscle, and bone hypertrophy. The overgrowth or hypertrophy is usually of a single extremity, but could be of more extremities and adjacent parts of the trunk. Other manifestations that can happen in KTS are limb anomalies, like polydactyly, syndactyly, camptodactyly, clinodactyly, and small nails. Positional limb and or trunk defects, such as scoliosis, hip dislocation, metatarsus varus. We can also have autonomic dysfunction, for instance, hyperhidrosis. and systemic complications, such as ulcerations, cellulitis, thrombophlebitis, embolism, high output cardiac failure, hemorrhages, and edema. Here we've got some considerations. The vascular malformation can fade over time and appear as an area of skin discoloration. Capuche et al. Proposed that adipose tissue can be affected without muscle tissue commitment, like an isolated and localized adipose tissue alteration. And disturbed growth is usually located at the same site as the vascular malformation. The overgrowth could be of extremity length or girth, partial or complete. A child with KTS requires limb growth monitoring in order to prevent orthopedic complications. And when feasible and clinically relevant, imaging studies may be helpful in excluding major vascular abnormalities. And how about inverse klippel-trenaunay syndrome? So it's a new term to a different phenotype. It's a paradox KTS when the affected extremity is more atrophic or shorter than the other, with deficient growth. And it may have soft tissue, fat, and muscle, and even bone hypertrophy of the affected extremity. Here we have some images of case examples. On this first case, we can see port wine stents localized on the lumbar region, the left lower leg and foot. The shortness of the affected extremity is also seen. On the second case, there are port wine stents extending from the thigh to the entire leg and the sole of the foot. The color of the skin malformation was purple at birth and faded over the following months. And we have reduced size of the affected limb coupled with increased size of the first, second, and third toe. On this other case, there are a telangiectatic plaque with focal dermal and soft tissue atrophy on the right buttock, and without significant difference on limb length or girth. And on this last case, we can see a vascular malformation and lipoatrophy extending from the right buttock to the upper back of the thigh. The size of the thigh circumference was smaller than the contralateral thigh. On the MRI of the lower limbs of the last case, we can see reduced subcutaneous adipose tissue on the right leg without any muscle change. So, what if it's not an inverse KTS case? What can it be? Here are some possibilities of differential diagnosis. First of all, angio-osseo hypertrophic syndrome, also known as cervical-martorell angiodysplasia, is a limb overgrowth associated with bone undergrowth and mainly venous malformation. The second possible differential diagnosis is a subtype of the Proteus syndrome, also called elato-Proteus syndrome, and on that may present segmental areas of deficient growth.